We're closing in on the start of a new season, and so in our now final introductory video for the new season, we'll dive into the competitions and races that will be coming up this year. Starting with the biggest of the competitions, the stage on which everybody wants to perform, let's dive straight in to the UCI World Cup. The World Cup is the big prize. It's the largest of the three competitions and in recent years the most prestigious. This year's competition will shrink from last year's record 16 rounds to 14 amid complaints that last year it took up too much space in the calendar. This year sees 3 brand new rounds enter the competition, as 5 of last year's races are dropped for various reasons. Hoge Heide, the traditional season finale, is dropped from the World Cup for the first time since 2014, and it is dropped for the same reason too. Like 2014, Hoge Heide will this year be hosting the World Championships, merely a week or two after its usual calendar slot. In a similar vein, fan favourite Namur is not in the World Cup this year, as it is poised to host the European Championships instead. So don't worry, you'll still get to watch both courses in action. In fact, they'll probably have even higher stakes than usual. The races in Flamanville, Iowa and interestingly Koksijde have also left the World Cup. And so what we're left with is the usual American doubleheader to start the competition off. On the 9th of October we once more go to Waterloo in the USA to start the World Cup off, before a week later we visit Fayetteville, some 9 months on from hosting the World Championships. Back in Europe, Tabor moves up in the calendar to become the 3rd round of the competition, the Czech Classic returning to the World Cup for the 19th time. We finish off a busy October with a 4th round, the first in the Netherlands, as we return to Rukven after its debut last year. Round 5 is the first debutant in the competition. The Beekse Bergen in the Netherlands has hosted the Dutch National Championships in the past, but for the first time a World Cup event will be held near the grounds of the Dutch Safari Park. After a new race, we go to Overijse, a cross held more than almost any other, and our first Belgian round of the competition. Hulst moves from January to the end of November and is our 3rd and final Dutch round before we launch into December, the busiest month of the calendar and the busiest month in the World Cup as well. Cancelled last year due to Covid worries, Antwerp will this year make its delayed debut in the competition. The Scheldekross is a classic layout, but only now is moving to this highest level. The week after Antwerp we head to the UK for only the 2nd time in the World Cup's history. London is touted to host this round, but precise locations are seemingly still under wraps. The rumour is Crystal Palace Park, the site that hosted the 1974 World Championships, will be the place where it will be held. After metropolitan London, we head over to the quiet vistas of the Alps as we return to Val di Sole after an incredible debut last year in Italy. The Alpine village served up a show on ice and snow last year, and likely will do the same just the week before Christmas once more. The day after Christmas is the penultimate Belgian round of the competition in Dendermonde, before we head to Zonhoven on the 8th of January 2023. The Kuil has been hosting its crosses early in the season recently, potentially causing a drop in attendance. By hosting this one right at the height of the season, hopefully we see Zonhoven back to its very, very best. After Zonhoven we go in search of the sun. Benidorm is the final debutant in the competition for this year. Whilst many riders go on pre-season road training camps on the Spanish coast, Benidorm is smartly being placed to this place in the calendar in order to entice those still training in southern Spain to pick up a race whilst they're there. And with Hoge Heide missing out as it's on World Championship duty, Besançon will be the finale of the World Cup this year. The course is very similar to Hoge Heide in the way that it plays with small height differences, and in the dry at least, it should create an incredibly tense race, and potentially an incredibly tense finale to the World Cup as a whole. The Superprestige is the old gallant competition of cross. It's the oldest competition in the sport, but over the years it's started to feel somewhat outdated, maybe a relic of a past time, and personally I'm slightly worried that this year is the final blow to the Superprestige, as an equal to the World Cup. The Superprestige will this year consist of seemingly 7 rounds, one less than last year, though it might still rise to 8. What we do know is that Middelkerke, a true cross classic, returns to be the finale of the competition after hosting the Belgian National Championships last year instead. The race dropping out of the competition in its place is unfortunately Gieten, the only non-Belgian round in a competition that originally started under the principle of one race per country. Gieten is another historic race, and seemingly the reason for it being dropped from the calendar is that it's too far away for sponsors to be interesting, something I personally find utterly insane. Dropping out of the Superprestige has spelled an immediate end for Gieten, the oldest cross in the Netherlands, leaving a gaping hole in the Dutch cross season 2. It also means that the Superprestige starts considerably later than usual. Ruddervoorde will be the opening round on the 29th of October, and after that in November there are rounds in Niel and Max-Plas. Gavre is put back in its rightful place in the calendar, with its spot now being on the 3rd of December. We get 2 rounds back to back too, with Zolder on the 27th of December and Diegem returning and being held a day later. Middelkerke will close off the competition on the 11th of February. And finally, there is the situation surrounding Boom, which currently does not appear to have a date, but is seemingly supposed to be the 8th round of the competition. If there's no calendar spot to be found, the cross will likely be dropped, but it's not out of the question that they'll find some place to still hold this race. The X2O Trofee meanwhile is as ever the old reliable. There is one change to the 8-round roster of the competition for this year. That change is Kokzijde joining the competition, replacing Loenhout. As is tradition by now, the X2O series starts with the true classic of the Koppenberg Cross, held on its traditional 1st of November birth. The trophy is, as it was last year, very backloaded. Only November's urban cross in Kortrijk still happens in 2022. On New Year's Day we race in Baal, another traditional meeting, before on the 3rd and the 5th we race again in Herentals and Kokzijde. On the 28th we have the final race before the World Championships in Hamme, and then the post-Worlds races of Lille and Brussels University take place in February, Brussels Uni being the final classification race of the season. Last year the ETIAS Cross, this year Exact Cross. This series has no overall leaderboard but is simply a collection of crosses with no current home. The Exact Cross is seeing a bunch of change this year to its 8-round roster. Leuven and Bredene appear to be totally scrapped as racers, while Maldegem has disappeared too, whilst Lokeren leaves the competition to host the Belgian Championships this year. Joining the competition are Zonnebeke, held for the first time post-Covid, and Mol, up until now a standalone event. Loenhout also joins the competition, the classic dropping out of the X2O Trofee, and finally Sint-Niklaas officially joins. The race was held as a substitute event over the past 2 years, but is now being rewarded with a permanent berth. Alongside the 4 new additions, Kruibeke, Beringen, Meulenbeke and Essen remain part of the competition, Kruibeke being the first Belgian race of the season. Beringen and Meulenbeke will also function somewhat as warm-up races to the first World Cups. The USCX series is returning after its successful first edition last year with a few changes to its roster. Rochester and Charm City return to the competition, being rounds 2 and 3 held in late September and early October. The cancellation of Jingle Cross sees it fall away from the series, and so does King's Cyclocross in Cincinnati. Arriving in their place are Go Cross in Roanoke, the new season opener on the 17th and 18th of September, and a new season finale with Really Rad Festival in Falmouth joining on the 5th and 6th of November. Remember, the USCX series races 2 rounds per location, 1 on each day, coming up to 8 rounds of competition in total as well. The British National Series is largely unchanged compared to last year. The rounds in Derby, Falkirk, Sunderland, Brofton Park and Gravesend all remain on the calendar. Milnthorpe drops away this year to host the British National Championships, and in its place we get a race at Torbay Velo Park in Torquay. The Coupe de France is seeing fairly major change, with only Troyes sticking as the competition's finale from last year. The competition shrinks from 8 to 6 rounds, with the opener in Nome at the end of October. In November comes another new round in Camors. Before the 3rd and 4th of December we get the aforementioned finale in Troyes. Much like the USCX series, every round here is a double header, which gets us to the total 6 rounds. After the EKZ Cross Tour folded at the end of 2020, it looked very bleak for Swiss cyclocross, but after a season of nothing, a new competition has been formed, the Swiss Cyclocross Cup. The competition has 5 rounds, starting with Mettmanstetten in the early October. By the end of the month we also race in Schneisingen and in Bulle, but not the Swiss Bulle, Bulle just over the border in France. The final 2 rounds are former EKZ racers making their return to Swiss national competition in Hitnau and in Meilen. And that should be it. Those are all the major and some minor cyclocross competitions being held over the coming season. I hope that once again this has been able to clarify some stuff as to the upcoming calendar and as to when you really want to be watching which races. If you enjoyed it, feel free to subscribe, and I'm sure there'll be more cyclocross related content dropping very, very soon. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.